This week I've got a countdown for you of the top 3 hardest skips to find. Hi, I'm Larry Kaye with ShadowAnyone.com and the creator of the Investigator's Ultimate Guide series, premium private investigator training from someone who's been there and done that. First of all, if you don't know skips, skip tracing, skips are people who have skipped out on an obligation. And we use this term generally even for people who haven't truly skipped out. Maybe you're looking for a long lost love for someone or those types of things where the person really hasn't skipped out, but we've just lost track of them. We still use that term skip tracing. But for these, I'm talking about people who are actually skipping out on an obligation or a need to show up. My number 3 hardest skip to find, and I'm cheating a little bit on this one, and I'll explain to you why, but the number 3 hardest skip to find is someone who's avoiding service of process. Somebody who has some court papers that need to go to them, but they're refusing service, and more than refusing service, they're trying to hide or not even be found. Now, the reason I say I'm cheating a little bit on this is because they're not necessarily terribly hard to find. Most people, maybe the address is old, that type of thing, you can find them pretty easily. You do add that little catch where they might be refusing service. So even when you do find where they live, they refuse to come to the door, those types of things, which can add a little bit of a wrinkle to it. Once you find them, then you may have to use some of the particularly tricky things to serve them if they're trying to refuse service. Those are the types of things I teach in the Investigator's Ultimate Guide to Process Serving. But generally speaking, people refusing service can be difficult to find. Still not terribly difficult, and a little behind the scenes reason as to why they're not always terribly difficult. This is just the reality of it. They may do a really good job of skipping out initially. They may leave their job, not tell anybody where they're going, those types of things. Make a nice clean break. But court cases drag on forever. If you've ever been involved with one, you know this. A lawsuit is nothing for a lawsuit to last 2 years. For child support, that goes until the child is 18, doesn't it? So if there's a divorce when the child is 8, you've got 10 more years that case is open, and it's occasionally revisited and things are recalculated, but 10 years. So if someone tries to skip out, they may make a really good break initially, but eventually they're going to make a mistake over the next 6 months, 18 months, 10 years. And especially by time other resources have been exhausted and they've called in a professional investigator, you should find plenty of clues and ways to find them. Just a kind of an example of that type of thing. Someone who made a good clean break, skipped out, but lo and behold, a little later in the year, the bowling league starts up again. And sure enough, they go back into that bowling league. They just drop their guard. They go 6 months or more. They say, well, nothing's happened. I haven't had any court papers. My ex isn't calling me and bothering me. They just drop their guard. It's very exhausting to truly remain skipped out and gone without leaving a trail. So you can find people who have skipped out who are trying to avoid service of process, but they are number 3 on my list. The number 2 people on my list of skips that are difficult to find, bail jumpers. And again, this kind of falls into that same category, except they've got more to lose. They know I missed my court appointment. They know they should have shown up there. And they're taking most of them, kind of just some soft moves not to be found, not to get picked up. So now they're not going back to their apartment. They're kind of staying at their girlfriend's place, that type of thing. The reason they're difficult is because they're just sort of on guard. They know that I was supposed to be there and I didn't. Again, if it goes for a while, they tend to drop their guard more and more. But bail jumpers can be a little bit tricky to find. Not at all, not impossible. They can be found. They can be found. But a lot of times they're just a little more on guard. Sometimes pretext on their families are going to be a little more difficult because their families know they were supposed to show up in court, those types of things. Those are my number 2. The number 1 difficult skips to find, people whose car you need to repossess. This is even more than bail jumping. People do not want to lose their car. People get picked up on an outstanding warrant or something like that. They know, I'm going to do an overnight, or I'm going to see the judge on Monday. I can plead guilty to a lesser offense, probably be out pretty quick. But people do not want to lose their car. They know once that car is gone, it's gone. And it's a burden for someone in that circumstance to try to get another vehicle. So people whose cars you're trying to locate for repossession. Now, because these are difficult, I always charge a lot for these. I charge $500, $550, usually $550 to find the vehicle. And the reason that these are difficult, aside from the fact the person is trying to hide the car, but by time, again, you, a professional investigator, get pulled in on this, called in on this by the creditor, the repo guy has really tried, and probably tried his or her best tricks to get this car. And even if not being tricky, they have gone up and knocked on the door repeatedly. They've made the phone calls. They've done the drive-bys. So the person you're looking for, really the vehicle, they know, that person knows they are being hunted, so to speak. And they are taking extraordinary measures to make sure you don't get the car. And that does make them the most difficult skips in my book to find. Not at all impossible. Certainly worth it if you know what you're doing. If you know how to find people and you're charging, again, $1,000 or more to find them, it's certainly something you can make a profit at. This is Larry Kaye with ShadowAnyone.com. Remember, do the right thing, even if it's the hard thing.